The mayor's method is not working. You can't keep wasting money on homeless outreach people to talk to individuals that are so inebriated on drugs, they're not gonna make the right decision.
A popular San Francisco activist who has garnered thousands of views online from his viral videos has now been arrested and charged with sex crimes. We're going to break down the stunning news surrounding Ricci Wynne. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Does the name Ricci Wynne sound familiar? If you live in San Francisco, it probably does, because Ricci Wynne is a neighborhood watchdog who blew up on social media, turned from a reported former drug dealer to basically a social media sensation. The 39-year-old has got over 105,000 Instagram followers, almost 30,000 followers on X, formerly Twitter. He's made multiple appearances on Fox News, and what he does is he posts videos about the homeless situation in the city, about crime, about the drug epidemic.
I'm right here with my mom at the Wells Fargo Bank. She's trying to go get money out of the ATM right here in front of City Hall. Look at this madness down here. Hey, bro, y'all want to clear out the way? My mom can use the ATM?
But here's the thing. For all of the awareness that he is bringing to these issues and the lawlessness in San Francisco, Mr. Wynne has just found himself behind bars. That's right. He was just arrested at the San Francisco International Airport, and now he's facing charges of felony pimping and pandering by procuring. In fact, it's believed that when he was arrested, he was accompanied by a woman. That woman who was with him was the person that he is now suspected of pimping out. Now, she's since been released after being detained. But apparently, police had searched his home. And when they searched his home, that is when they found probable cause to arrest him. According to San Francisco DA Brooke Jenkins, Wynne allegedly had phones that, quote, contained evidence of sex advertisements for a woman, communications of the woman being available to have sex in exchange for money, and the collecting of money. And reportedly, there was 18 months of ads on those devices, and there was also an accounting of clients' payments and associated dates. And this alleged sex work may have crossed state lines too. Apparently, he also had $80,000 in cash at the time of his arrest and was living in a luxury apartment. Questionable, considering he reportedly had been working cleaning offices and operating a crane. According to the San Francisco Standard, this arrest came about after an investigation into an alleged sexual assault of a 15-year-old. Although I will tell you, Judge Kenneth Wine, who's currently overseeing this case, reportedly indicated that this is separate from the state pimping case. Now, he's pled not guilty to the charges at his arraignment, and Semute Freeman, who is the deputy public defender currently representing Wynne, said, "I understand that there is a lot of interest around his case, given his social media presence. We are going to be fiercely representing him in this case. Right now, all the facts that we know are from law enforcement, so we need to investigate this case." It's been reported that Wynne has been transferred to federal custody, and it may be linked to that other investigation that I mentioned. He has a hearing set for December 6th and also a preliminary hearing on December 12th when prosecutors will lay out more of the evidence that they have against him. So I have a lot to talk about with this. Let me bring on trial attorney Jennifer El-Kadi, who specializes in human trafficking cases. Really good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on. Just your initial thoughts, impressions about this update.
I mean, I think it's a little bit disappointing, as it was for a lot of people, in the fact that he is such a public figure and he did a lot with anti-crime activism with respect to drug usage and drug and homeless crises within San Francisco. So I think it shocked a lot of people as to seeing how this is going to pan out. I think it makes a lot of people question as to whether or not people's genuineness on the internet is actually a thing and what they believe in.
And look, he's innocent until proven guilty. These are purely allegations. Seems like from this outset, he's going to be vigorously defending himself against these charges. Let's talk about that for a second. So I looked up the law on this. The pimping charge, my understanding, is essentially when you live off of or receive financial benefit or support from someone's prostitution activities, and the pandering is literally procuring or recruiting someone for prostitution. And the penalties, they can range depending on certain factors, but you're looking up to what, 3 to 6 or 8 years in prison for each offense? You know, I wonder, how difficult is it for prosecutors to prove these kinds of charges?
I agree with that. I mean, I think for especially the pimping, the knowledge of the prostitution itself is definitely going to be, I think, a little bit difficult considering it is an adult. Um, Receipt of the financial benefit, I think you had mentioned that there was already 18 months worth of ads and there was accounting to show that there was payment. So I think that element might be a little bit easier. But with respect to the knowledge of the prostitution, we really don't know enough about the facts right now, and maybe more witnesses will come out and testify. But as it stands, there's not enough. I don't see a good bit of evidence.
Hey, so before we jump into this story, I have something I gotta tell you about. I host and executive produce a show called Crime with Jesse Weber. And now it is launched on Spotify. Yes, you can listen on the go. And this show puts a spotlight on those really shocking, infamous, controversial crime stories. We go from beginning to end, from the 911 call to the verdict. We go through body cams, police interrogations, interviews with the players in the case. We want you to have a full understanding of the story from all sides, so you can follow Crime on Spotify right now. Just click the link below and in the description. Let me ask you a crazy question. I have no idea if this would work. This is aside from the fact that apparently he had $80,000 in cash. If he was just helping somebody with, let's say she was engaging in sex work, but he didn't receive any money, he didn't receive anything better, he was just doing a favor, is that not pimping?
He would have to receive some type of financial benefit from the prostitution earnings. So if he didn't receive any benefit, if they can't prove that he received that benefit, that money was given to him, then it's not pimping.
And talk to me about the reporting that he had all this cash on him and he lived in a, again, reportedly a fancy apartment. He's also very active on social media. I don't know if he's making a ton of money on social media. Potentially could be, but he has to have alternative explanations for having the cash in the apartment, right?
Absolutely. I do agree with you that that's a little bit out of the ordinary to have just $80,000 in cash. I don't know very many people that do that. So whether or not that's from the pimping and pandering, whether or not that's potentially drug money, we really don't know, quite frankly. And I'm not entirely sure how much money he was making on social media, if any at all, just as a social activist.
And to be clear, there's a lot of details that we don't know. For example, as I said, it seems they were searching his house, had probable cause. Why they arrested him seemingly while he was at the airport or going to the airport, what do you make of that?
That was interesting to me, that as he was leaving Miami and they saw him with a 30-year-old, that was just because they searched his apartment. I'm not entirely sure that there was enough evidence. I do agree with you on that, with what you're saying. But there, like you said, we don't know all the facts. We don't have all the evidence. Maybe there was more to it and we just don't know. But it was interesting that they arrested him. I mean, because they must have thought that he was some type of flight risk.
Or was it that? Or if you take the allegations that maybe this sex work was happening across state lines, he was potentially in the process of transporting her for sex work. And again, I don't know. This is pure speculation. I just find the timing of that, maybe that would help their case in some way.
I think that's a really great point. And I'm not sure if we know where he was taking her, if it was from Miami back to San Francisco, but that would be interesting to know.
And by the way, this woman that he was traveling with, if she wasn't arrested, if she was released, does that signal to you she could be a key witness in this case?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, her testimony is definitely going to be one that prosecution is going to try and get, or defense is trying to get as well.
This is a state case, though, but I mentioned the connection to what seems to be a federal case or a federal investigation. As far as I know, he hasn't been hit yet with federal charges, but he was transferred into federal custody. What do you think's going on there? What is that relationship between state investigators and federal investigators? Could he be hit with federal charges? Why was he transferred into federal custody? You have to make sense of this for me.
I think it goes back to potentially the first reason as to why they were investigating him, which was potentially pimping and pandering a minor, and that could be human trafficking. It also could be, I think you had mentioned, that traveling across state lines. So there could be a federal claim under the human trafficking statute of 18 USC Code 1591. So he could potentially, there could be federal jurisdictions involved with that, where he was forcing or coercing these women to be involved in commercial sex. So it could be because of the minor claim potentially.
And look, I don't know exactly the full details of that claim with respect to the minor. And as far as I know, the state charges are not necessarily with respect to a minor. I could be wrong. But again, it could, if that's the case, that definitely amplifies this case to a different degree. Why do you think he was transferred to federal custody? Because at the time of this recording, he hasn't been hit with federal charges yet. Is that typical to transfer somebody into federal custody while they might? I mean, I'm confused by that.
I think it could be because he is a social media personality, and it could be due to a separate federal investigation that could have been involved with the sexual assault of a minor. But we do know that it's distinct from the state charges right now. But it could be that it just falls under a different jurisdiction. And that's why the federal case is involving different accusations.
Now, I had mentioned before that he had this previous stint with the law. Back in 2019, he was indicted on federal weapons and drug charges. He ended up pleading guilty, reportedly sentenced to time served, and was released in 2021 on 3 years probation. How does that affect this case?
Well, it depends as to whether or not that can be used against him if he does take the stand and opens the door to that. But past prior acts could be introduced, but it really is just going to be dependent upon what it is that defense and prosecution are going to use.
And I imagine if he's found guilty, his past record could hurt him in terms of sentencing, right?
Absolutely. It absolutely could be used to hurt him.
So I mentioned that on December 12th, right, he has this preliminary hearing where the prosecution has to present sufficient evidence that there is probable cause, enough of a case here to move forward towards trial. Relatively low burden, low standard for the prosecution, especially given what some of the evidence they've laid out already that they claim they have. How much do you think will actually be revealed? How much evidence do you think we will hear of, and how many bits of the story will we figure out?
I think we'll learn more about what those electronic communications consisted of and what the financial evidence of the $80,000 does entail. I think we might hear a little bit about the potential witnesses that they're going to present. I'm not entirely sure what all we will get access to, but I think given that those two pieces of information were disclosed to the public, we'll learn more about those and what that consisted of.
All right. Well, Jennifer El-Kadi, we'll have to see for ourselves what happens. Just a really weird development with such a high-profile individual. But I really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jesse.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.